So I was reading through the Bible the other day myself. I'm reading through Kings and Chronicles. And one of the greatest kings in Israel, his name is Hezekiah. The nation of Judah had turned its back on God. They started worshiping idols and doing all sorts of evil and perverse things, even murdering their own children to sacrifice them to the false gods. Hezekiah put a stop to that. Hezekiah reformed the entire nation, got everybody worshiping God. He was a good man and a good king. But he lived during the time when the northern Jewish kingdom, Israel, was destroyed by the Assyrians. He was the king of the south when the north was destroyed. And the guy that destroyed the north, the Assyrian king, said, "We're coming after you next." And he came down to Judah, laid siege. Well, Hezekiah prayed to God and said, "God, we can't fight this battle. They're too big for us." And God said, "You're right. You can't. Don't worry about it. Got you covered." Next morning, they all got up and left. Can you imagine? Your entire city is surrounded by enemies. You pray to God. The next morning, they just leave. They came back again. Same thing. "God, we can't handle it. Don't worry. Got you covered." Next morning, I don't remember the number. I think it was 10,000 of their captains just were dead the next day. Freaked out the enemy so bad they got up and left. It says an angel came and killed them. God fought the battles for Hezekiah. It was awesome. But because of these sieges, Hezekiah said, "You know what? All these bad guys are coming. They're surrounding us. And Jerusalem's kind of like Tucson. It's hot. It's dry." So he said, "Why are we going to leave water brooks out there for them to drink of while they're trying to kill us?" So what he did is he diverted the water courses and sent them all underground into Jerusalem so that they could have the water and the enemies couldn't. That's mentioned in the Bible. A few years ago, an archaeologist from Britain named Warren discovered this water course underground. And today it's known as Hezekiah's Tunnel, and you can actually walk through it. There's inscriptions on the wall that says, "This is the tunnel that we built for Hezekiah to keep the water in," that kind of thing. I got a picture of it right there. I took that picture as I walked in it. Now, you have never been in a dark place unless you've been in solid rock underground. So I decided I'd take a picture of myself under there. Big mistake. You don't want to use a flash in a dark cave underground. You start hitting your head. Bible's historically accurate. I walked through the evidence. I took some of the evidence home. This information from ChristianAnswers.net, quote, "Documents written on clay tablets from around 2300 BC demonstrate that personal and place names in the patriarchal accounts are genuine." Here's what I'm talking about. One of the oldest books in the Bible is the book of Genesis. Moses wrote that, and he talks about the beginning. And he mentions these cities and towns and people groups that secular archaeologists said didn't exist, or that Moses wrote the names wrong because they didn't use those names in those days. Obviously, the Bible can't be right because our brilliant scientists have proven it to be so. Ahem. The Hittites were once thought to be a biblical legend until their capital and records were discovered in Turkey. Oops. It was once claimed there was no Assyrian king named Sargon, as recorded in Isaiah 20. So like all these other things, the Bible says something happened. Somebody says, no, it didn't. They dig it up. They find it to be true. Oops. The Bible says something else happened. The archaeologists say, no, it didn't. They dig it up, find it to be true. They say, oops. The Bible says something. This happens thousands of times, and they still don't trust the Bible. I got a word for people like that, but we're on camera, so I'm not going to use it today. It was once claimed there is no Assyrian king named Sargon, as recorded in Isaiah 20, because his name was not known in any other record. Then Sargon's palace was discovered in Iraq. The very event mentioned in Isaiah 20, his capture of Ashdod, is recorded on the palace walls. Oops. Another king who was in doubt was Belshazzar. In looking at the non-biblical records, and this is the first mistake they always make, they try to look at the non-biblical records, figured it out, and if it's different from the Bible, they think the Bible's wrong. You'd think after a few thousand corrections, they'd change their attitude about the Bible. Guess a few thousand more would help. So they look at the secular history, and they find the last king of Babylon, and they give him the name Nabonidus. He was the last king. But the Bible talks about this guy named Belshazzar. We go from Nebuchadnezzar to Nabonidus. There ain't no Belshazzar. Bible's wrong again. What's that word? Oops. Another king who was in doubt was Belshazzar, king of Babylon, named in Daniel 5. The last king of Babylon was Nabonidus, according to recorded history. Tablets were found showing that Belshazzar was Nabonidus' son, who served as co-regent in Babylon. So in Daniel chapter 5, they're having this big pagan festival, and this hand, disembodied hand, appears and starts writing on the wall. That's where that expression comes, man, they can't even see the writing on the wall. That's where it comes from. So his hand appears and starts writing on the wall, and they can't understand what the writing is. So they call in the chief magi, Daniel the prophet, head of the magi, brings him in and says, what's that say? Daniel says, you really don't want me to tell you. He says, you tell me what that says, and I will make you third greatest in the kingdom. Third greatest? You'd think he'd hold out for number 2. Because that's what you did when you honored somebody. You didn't give him the number 3 slot. You gave him the number 2 slot. What's he offering him the number 3 slot for? Because it was Nabonidus' son. He was number 2. The Bible proves itself even by accident. So Daniel says, basically it says, your days are numbered. Pretty much you're going to die. Makes Daniel number 3. And sure enough, the guy dies. The Bible is scientifically accurate. The Bible is historically accurate. And the Bible is philosophically accurate. The Bible does not candy coat the truth. Here's a quote from the Bible. There's not a just man on the face of the earth that does good and sins not. There's not a just person on all of earth that can't keep from blowing it. Now, I don't like that fact, but do I find it to be philosophically accurate? Is it true? It doesn't matter whether I like it or not. See, the Bible's not about what do I like. The Bible's about the truth. You know, you jump off that building, you're going to go splat. Well, I don't like that. Well, then it's not going to go splat. Bible just tells you how it is, like it or not. Now, let's say the Bible is like those other books. It's just made up. Somebody fabricates it. It's a fairy tale. It's a legend. And a lot of people will tell you the Bible's a fairy tale. Fine. Let's say it's a fairy tale. You want to make a fairy tale, and you talk about your great hero, Abraham. Wouldn't he be big and strong and handsome? And wouldn't he do great deeds? This is the Abraham who almost killed his own son. He had a beautiful wife. And a king in an area he was hanging out saw his wife and wanted her. Abraham was afraid that the king would kill him, so he said, that's not my wife, that's my sister. Abraham, the big hero of the made-up book, lies to protect his butt, and his wife gets taken off to the palace. I wouldn't do my hero like that. My hero would say, you take my wife and I will smite thee. You know, and Abraham, he'd be like Samson. 1,000 guys would come against him, and he'd spin around his staff and go all crouching tiger, hidden dragon on him. Kill them all. That's how I'd make up my book. Wouldn't you make up your book that way? It'd be all Rambo. It wouldn't be, she's not my wife. He's the big hero of the Bible. Now, we go forward a few hundred years to another big hero of the Bible, Moses. God comes to Moses in the Bible and says, I have chosen you to get my people out of Egypt. And Moses goes, pick somebody else. I don't want to go. Outtake. Moses, we're on camera here. I said you're going. Come on. No, I don't speak very well. Send somebody else. Moses, I'm getting a little uptight here. It's time for you to go to Egypt and let my people go. Would you pick somebody else? Finally, God's got to yell at him. It says, this is not a democracy. You are going. Take your brother with you for backup. He speaks fine. You're going. What's that in your hand, Moses? A stick? Throw it down. He throws it down. It turns into a snake. You know what Moses does? The mighty brave hero I've just made up from legend? He turns around and runs from his own stick. Because that's really what happened. Not because he's a hero I made up. A hero would have said, hey, that's cool. Picked him up and shook him a bit. Moses, that's a... Moses, pick it up, man. Don't be afraid. So he picks it up. It becomes a stick again. Now, it doesn't say this in the Bible, But I bet you he was throwing that stick down all day. Honey, watch this. Let's go get the shepherds. Come on. Because the Bible is true. It tells you what happened, not what people want to hear.